On this episode, the clouds and the dirt. It's an idea by Gary Vaynerchuk. What does it mean for water-sensitive urban design? Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. And welcome back to another That's Like WSUD episode, where we take an idea or a concept that we've heard about or read about and relate it back to water-sensitive urban design so that we can learn from it and apply it in our day-to-day work. Today's concept is something called the clouds and the dirt, and this comes from Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, Gary is probably most well known now as being a YouTube and Facebook and other social media personality, but he is I think he'd describe himself first and foremost as a businessman, having built a wine business and now running a marketing agency. But regardless of that, Gary has this concept of the clouds and the dirt. And essentially what this is that when it comes to the way we act in trying to achieve our goals, which in his case are business related, but which I believe we could apply in other settings such as water sensitive urban design. When we come to apply ourselves to achieving these goals, his thought is that our actions need to be dictated around both what he terms clouds and dirt. And what they mean is clouds in this instance means really high level strategic, knowing what your goal is and going after it. So in Gary's case, his lifetime goal, at least in a business sense, his lifetime goal is to buy the New York Jets. Yeah, the NFL team, which is a seriously expensive undertaking to try and do. And so then his business activities are predicated around getting to that point in a couple of decades' time. So you can get the point. Whether or not you agree with that or think that's a sensible goal as a person is actually not important here. And whether I think that is not important either. What is important though is the understanding that when Gary mentions clouds in this context, it is really big, high level strategic thinking and following your goal. And then the dirt is the opposite. Dirt is about being, in Gary's mind, being an absolute practitioner. So to use another example in his case, he runs a marketing agency that is some 600 people strong at this point, I think. He runs this agency, and yet he has a very strong personal brand on social media, which he does leverage the agency to get this. But he, for example, personally responds to a very, 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 very large number of tweets and comments on social media. To put this in perspective, this is a guy with some 500,000 subscribers on YouTube who personally responds to huge amounts of comments. It's absolutely unheard of. And so dirt in this instance is being an absolute practitioner in the most minute, fine details of whatever it is that you do. Gary just happens to be a marketing man who believes that social media is the best way to market. Understand the absolute most basic nuances of what you do in order to be the very best practitioner that you can. And so Gary's theory of the clouds and the dirt is that if you want to achieve your goal, you need to spend all your time split between those two extremes, either exceptionally high level strategy or really detailed, really well thought out practitionership, and most importantly, to avoid the middle ground. But this is the important thing here, right? Is that it's not a case, there's a couple of ways to get this wrong in the way that Gary puts it. You could either be totally clouds based, and that's a problem because you won't understand the fine detail and the practitionership. So achieving the goal, it just won't happen because the fine details will defeat you. On the flip side, you can be completely dirt based, but then with no long-term vision, you're likely to just follow your nose, doing all these, really detailed, potentially very interesting things, but they're just not leading anywhere. So by doing both of them, that gives the right mix of really high level strategic direction and actually the capability to carry it out. But Gary's hypothesis and his theory here is that the vast majority of people spend their time in neither of them and actually get just stuck in this middle ground where they're doing things that are a little bit detailed and a little bit strategic, but just not enough of either to really get any traction and go anywhere. So let's apply this to water sensitive urban design. I will use myself as an example here because it is easiest for me to do. So clouds wise for me, with water sensitive urban design, I clearly put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this space and want it to come to fruition. want us to get to a water sensitive future where we have beautifully healthy and ecologically resilient waterways in our urban areas, where they add to the amenity and the livability of the city, where the city itself, because we use water in the landscape, is amenable and nice to live in and ecologically healthy. My high level goal, that is my high level goal, to get to that point. I would back that up with then a secondary belief. My clouds here are that, actually I'll come back to that little point. So my clouds is this vision of water sensitive urban design, which is way more than what we currently call water sensitive urban design. The way we currently talk about water sensitive urban design with bioretention systems and the like is not clouds for me. It is this much bigger vision in the future. But then detailed practitionership might be literally going out and digging in bioretention systems and watching them day to day, taking heaps of photographs over time. I've got a bioretention system where I've got photographs from something like 40 different days on it, having just visited it time and time and time again to watch it evolve over time. The dirts would be that really fine detail. But if you're a designer of stormwater management systems, then maybe it's your really fine detailed understanding of how modelling software works and what it can and can't be used for, and then testing out the minutiae of different development strategies. That might be your fine details, but you get the example here. One is a really big long-term vision about what water-sensitive urban design is. This is mine. Really big long-term vision about that. And the other one is being prepared to spend exorbitant amounts of time sitting in bioretention systems, just watching what's going on, trying to understand in real detail, trying to understand from a maintenance point of view in real detail what works and what doesn't within councils. It's that sort of really fine practitionership. An example of something where I haven't gone particularly deep on practitionership yet is I don't actually have a lot of experience in design of, say bioretention systems or wetlands. I've more been on either the planning or the maintenance end. So for me, a spot where I'm not being a deep enough practitioner is understanding the design point. And so in water sensitive urban design, some middle ground might be. So let's think about a topic that I'm particularly interested in at the moment is how do our stormwater treatment objectives for new development drive outcomes on the ground, and what do we need to do to get better outcomes? I have a funny feeling, this is where this gets real for water sensitive urban design. I look around a lot and see at the moment a lot of tweaking going on. I would say the state government's current, most recent updates to the state planning policy in Queensland is an example of this. I see a lot of middle ground stuff happening in water sensitive urban design, stuff which might seem a little bit strategic but is nowhere near the high level goal that we were just talking about, but is neither particularly detailed either. So this is fiddling around with like, oh, you know what, the current objectives apply to developments that are 6 lots, that create six or more new lots and are more than 2,500 square metres. I'm slightly oversimplifying that there. New developments apply to these things, and we're not quite getting all the outcomes we want. Should we change the thresholds to 4 lots and 1,000 square metres? That, on one level, seems like a really important question, but when you look at the fact that even if we did that, we still would be building really expensive treatment systems and not achieving what the environment needs, it's kind of missing the point to be strategic. But neither is it really, really detailed and sitting down and actually going, all these bad outcomes that we're getting from badly integrated bioretention systems, well, that sort of middle ground ain't going to fix it either. It's just neither visionary enough to make us a massive step forward, nor is it detailed enough to actually really fix any of the weird stuff that's going on. And so I think this is the lesson for water sensitive urban design, at least in Queensland, is at the moment, I think we're caught up in the middle ground here. I think that if we want to make big steps forward in this space, we either have to, actually, no, it's not either. I'm just imagining Gary's like, slap me across the face for going, it's not either. We have to both, and simultaneously, if we want to progress forward with water sensitive urban design towards a bigger vision. Of course, we don't all have to do this. This is my vision. So this is what I think we should be doing to reach the vision that I think we should be going towards. But what I think we need to be doing is simultaneously is important, simultaneously be going for both some really high level strategic visionary thinking about, okay, how do we get to this vision of a water sensitive city and do it in a cost effective manner? Not one or the other, both ecologically sustainable, beautiful waterways, really resilient, and it doesn't cost us a ton. How do we get to that vision? And at the same time, be putting thought into the minutiae of how do we get someone to get the right amount of nitrogen in their filter media? Like that sort of level of absolute minutiae also has to get right if we want this to work. So my message, inspired by Gary Vee, inspired by the clouds of the dirt, is let's start doing both. Let's start working on both the minutiae and the really high level, and let's get out of this middle ground that we feel like we're caught up in treading water, stuck in the mud, and all those other great analogies. Thank you for tuning in. As always with Ideanthro, if you have any questions, ideas, if you've got any thoughts, if you're a massive Gary Vaynerchuk fan, get in touch. If you dislike Gary, because he can be a bit of a, he'll be a bit in your face initially when you come across him. If in any way you want to get in contact, there's a few ways you can find us. You can find us at www.ideanthro.com. There's a contact page, you can hit us up there. You can find us on YouTube, hit us up in the comments below, or you can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Ideanthro. Leave a comment beneath the videos. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.